This is A State of Control, the look at control and automation segment of the AV industry. My name is Tom Albright. I am your host. With us, as always, is Mr. Steve Greenblatt, Chief Everything at Control Concepts. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Good to be back for another episode.
Also with us is Mr. Rich Fregosa, my brother, my pal from the West Coast. How are you, sir?
Mellow Bay Area greetings. Doing good. I'm waiting for summer still here one of these days, so it's not quite the sunny California weather yet, but summer approaches. Summer is nigh. Brace yourself. So.
Summer is nigh. The Giants have been playing some version of baseball the last couple months, and
just a little bit.
Good
times. Good times. Got the new championship lettering jersey the other week.
I don't even know why I bring that up. So with this is Chris Backus. He is from AMX, a College of AMX. I almost said AMX University, the College of AMX. How are you, sir?
Outstanding. Thanks for having me, Tim.
And a side note, completely self-serving, Chris wrote a very interesting blog, good Lord, about 6 months ago. He was turned on to our little program by Steve, and he went back and listened to every single episode of AV Week and wrote a blog about it. So it was cool. I liked it. It was neat.
Consecutively.
Consecutively. He started it at episode 0, which technically that is what our first episode was called.
Did you run out of like Netflix episodes or something?
Stop it! Sheesh.
It's like Game of Thrones finished and you had nothing else to do with your spare time?
But now he knows all the inside jokes.
Exactly.
That was
a lot of drive time. There's just a lot of drive time, so absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean, he lives in Florida and he works at AMX in Richardson, so you know, lots of drive. All right, last but not least, Jeff Ashachik.
Yep.
Close?
Pretty close.
All right, Director of Training at Crestron. How are you, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so we've got two trainer guys, right? That's kind of what we're doing here today. This was an interesting one because it stemmed off of Crestron's Masterclass, which was in April. AMX has their VIP training the end of July. Actually, again, for those that don't know, my full-time job is I'm director of operations for an independent programming house, similar to what Steve does. No, we're not competitors. I'm in the Midwest. He's in the East Coast. Don't ask. You know, we're pretty regionalized. But so one of my guys is 2 classes away from a very super secret, pretty cool certification. He'll have that at the end of that event. So we started talking about these things that were going on between Steve and I and kind of our businesses, and we're like, you know what? Let's talk about training. Right? It's an episode, something we haven't tackled before. Interestingly enough, this is episode 20 of State of Control. Still haven't really touched on manufacturing specific training. We've touched on ways to get into the industry, ways some skill sets that you need, but we've never really tackled this specific part of AMX and Crestron specifically. Obviously, other manufacturers have theirs as well. But first and foremost, and Steve, we'll kick it off with you because you not only had people there, but you yourself you were part of Masters training. How important is it to you? Because this is not it's not a cheap endeavor. It's an investment of time. It's an investment of money, really. So how important is it for you as an independent programmer to have these?
So I think first off, training is something that really gives you credibility and gives you some clout in the industry. So you have to show your dedication to your manufacturers, especially with people in our position. It's important for us to be able to know that we have a strong relationship and that relationship goes in both directions. But if we're not trained at what we do and we're supposed to be experts at programming, really the whole model falls apart. And not only do we need to know what others are being taught, or what needs to be taught to us, but we also have to know what others are hearing. So we get into conversations a lot of times, and we're speaking with customers, and many times we need to be able to respond to the questions that they have based on what they're being taught. So we need to not only learn what is the technical nuts and bolts, but we also need to know the tips and tricks, and we also need to know what's forthcoming and what's in the future and what's being promoted. So I think all that is super important. And for my team, these days they really opt, rather than to go to Infocom, to go to training, so that they can really spend the time learning and knowing and being taught and being told what they need to know, and learning it from somebody who's technical. They feel like they go to Infocom and they really don't do necessarily the sales thing. That's, as the technical people will say. So they prefer to really have conversations about something that they need to know, and they need to know right away, and rather than hearing about some product concepts. So it really is their way of kind of their lifeline, let's say, to the manufacturers and to the rest of the industry.
Well, and Jeff, to that end, I mean, what's changed maybe in the last 10, 15 years in training for control programmers? Because again, we've talked about this a number of times. Many people have written about this. 15 years ago, most, if not, if zero, processors had a network port, right? So you've got the network protocols, you have the security issues, you have all these other things. So what's changed to make sure that the programmers are being kept up to date?
Well, that's how or why we came up with this whole master's program, because guys like Steve or myself would come through these levels of classes and then we wouldn't see him again. I mean, if he happened to have a relationship with someone at Crestron and was telling him, hey, by the way, this thing is coming out, whatever this next thing is, how else would he know about it? And so that's when it was decided, well over 12 some odd years ago, John Otteson and a few others got together and said, hey, why don't we have all these smart guys back once a year and just review stuff with them. Hey, this is new stuff that's coming out that you don't necessarily know, whether it's programming concepts of we're doing stuff, whether we're now how we're doing stuff with Simple Sharp, opening up a whole new programming language and methodology that no one else is getting involved with or doing yet. So that was the idea, because training is so important, and these are the guys that we want, out there working, selling our stuff. So when someone sells our stuff, we want someone like Steve, who's been into training and knows how important it is, that he can answer those questions. He knows what our stuff does, and especially with this last Masters. I don't know how many people really noticed or knew when they came to it of who the instructors were. I mean, these were the design engineers. These were the ones that made the decision as to put a feature in, not to put a feature in, why something works, why something doesn't work. So, if Steve said, hey, this is great, but it doesn't do this, why not? These were the guys that made those decisions to say, oh, no, that's coming, or we're not doing it, we're doing this instead. That they got that insight to meet everyone in engineering. Now Steve, being in the Northeast, is close to Crestron, so he's been able to meet a lot of these people in there over the years. But someone out in the Midwest or West Coast, they didn't necessarily get that relationship. So it gets them to be in there to see, so that they know what we're doing and moving forward with what we're doing. That they give a preview of it. So they help them with their business, so that they know what's coming. They're not having to wait until something like Infocom to see more of a sales spin. These, have no sales, nothing, all technical. The deeper you can go, more technical, the better for everyone attending.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, from you guys' standpoint, and Jeff, you can jump in on this as well. You guys do cover, obviously, product specific, right? Because your products do significantly different things, and you guys do it different ways. Are there, what are some of the areas that you cover that aren't product specific, that don't necessarily have, an AMX or whatever label on it, that they're just kind of general knowledge or deeper general knowledge for the industry?
I think for a long time, at least it was my impression, that we were kind of assuming the student would come to class with a certain level of industry knowledge, and that assumption wasn't always correct. And so we've done recently is in January we released a core curriculum that really covers industry topics, and it's not really focused on AMX that much. There's one piece of that. I have 7 different modules of that, and only one of those is really kind of an AMX specific, but it's almost a welcome to the industry, so that we're at least having an informative conversation that all parties understand what's being said in the classroom, as well as just even in the workplace. We saw that there was just a huge deficiency in terminology in terms of audio. When you talk to folks about this is a line level output versus a speaker level output, people were really struggling with that. And so I know that organizations like InfoComm and CEDIA have fantastic classes, but it assumes you're a member and it assumes you have access to that. And I'm sure Jeff can agree that all of our students don't actually get access to that for whatever reason, in terms of their employer, who may or may not put in a level of importance on that. And so, like Steve, I know, and you too, Tim, you guys put a lot of emphasis on training, but you're the minority, it would seem at times. And so where a lot of folks in the industry are not. So to your original question, what we're looking to do is kind of capture those industry topics. At a minimum, it's not meant to make anyone an expert, but really it's just kind of to raise that baseline so that when students are in class, they're having a much better experience in class because they know what we're talking about.
So let me, you can correct me because I'm thinking I've gathered this. This is more for your on-demand type stuff, not necessarily in the class, right?
We made it a prerequisite to go to class.
Okay, so you have to do this before you can ever get into the classroom.
Correct.
Okay, and that
because
makes sense.
what we really found, I just had a conference with all the global instructors, and really for the last year since I've been involved with the training team, that's been their number one challenge is really the level of preparation for a student coming into the classroom. On one end of the spectrum, you have a student that is completely qualified to be there, and they're probably a rock star in their own right. But the challenge is on the other end of the spectrum, you've got someone that may have just been handed a laptop, they've never seen it before, and they just got told, go to class and they'll show you what to do with it. So very, very big continuum in terms of the level of experience. And so when you have those two students in the same class, what tends to happen is even with a senior instructor who can really do great classroom management, you're going to find that the level of instruction is going to water itself down because they want to keep the class together and they're going to move along together. And so when you have that big of a disparity in preparation, you're really finding that the experience for the person that did come prepared wasn't so great. And so what we want to do is really kind of elevate that experience across the board. And so that's really why we put that into place. And I have to say the uptake has been crazy. In less than 60 days, we hit our 1,000th person to take the AMX test, right? The AMX Essentials test. I didn't market it. I didn't tell anybody it was there. I just put it out there, put it as far as some renewal criteria and new people trying to register. And the adoption rate has been fantastic. And in the classroom, the instructors are saying essentially the folks that have been able to do the prerequisites are more prepared, and they're finding that the class goes a lot smoother. So I didn't think that was going to be a challenge for us. Like I said, it was really an assumption going into it a year ago. But really to address that experience that the instructors were describing, that's what we did. And I know other folks are doing similar things. I know Extron has their AV Associate program, and it's intended to do the exact same thing. So there's other stuff in the industry, and Jeff, you want to tell us what you're doing. I'm sure you're doing some similar things, but that was a challenge that we saw, and that's what we're doing to solve it.
Yeah, we saw a very, very similar circumstances like what you had. We had people coming in, they're the proverbial rock star, and others they got the laptop that morning and said, here, go, we'll figure it out. And we saw the same thing, and that's why one of the first things that I did when I took over is entrance. You got to pass the bar. That you have to know something. You have to know what line level is, or what speaker level, or something. Nothing that they can't do and get over with. Like you said, you have something online that you have to do where it's open to anybody and everybody, not relying on them being a part of an organization of InfoComm or CEDIA, because with Steve, like you say, you are an exception with what you do, and we really appreciate all of it. We all appreciate it because there's a lot of dealers out there, and whether it's the dealer, it's the ownership, it's the service manager, whoever, or the person themselves not being able to get that access to it. So even if you got someone that wants to learn, they can't. There's no way for them to necessarily get in there. And that's why I like what you guys are doing. Is we're trying to do the same thing. How do you educate the industry? And even if it's not product specific, it's just general knowledge, just to make them better, than to go to our dealer. So whether you've got ones coming fresh out of a trade school, high school, a college, or something, that if they weren't the one pushing around the AV cart, they're now learning about the industry, as a whole, then come in and learn specific product, whether it's us or you or whoever have you, to help out, our dealer base as well as yours, because we share a lot of, commonalities.
Sure. I feel that industry knowledge is the building block, and honestly, everything that we're going to teach them relies on that knowledge, right? It's totally predicated on them knowing certain foundational things. And so when we start talking about troubleshooting, no one operates in a vacuum, right? And so you have to understand the larger system as a whole, and that's really where that industry part comes in, so that you can understand the points of failure. And sometimes it's hardware, sometimes it's code, sometimes it's a combination of both. But unless you have that knowledge, you're really going to struggle. And that's ultimately, and I'm sure you've all seen this, folks that put an emphasis on training are generally more successful than others who don't. And I don't have numbers today to back that up, but I just know that the calls I take are not from certified people. The calls I take are not from people with CTS after their name and things like that. For most training-related issues that we've got, they seem to be foundational, and it's a clear sign that we're lacking in that area in a couple of points in the marketplace, and those are the most vocal because they're the most visible. Whenever you have a train wreck, it's pretty visible, and so you start to dissect it and want to see how to solve it, and a lot of it comes back to training. So I would just say that industry part, we really appreciate what Infocom and CEDIA and the other organizations are doing. I just want to increase access to it, and so to Jeff's point, that's why we had to really kind of put it out there, our own little entry-level bit, just to make sure that people had access to it when they needed it.
Yeah, just for the record, this CTS has called tech support more than once, and I'm not ashamed to say that I have. So.
But I would tell you that call went a lot smoother because you had diagnosed it and you gave a lot of helpful information, rather than I showed up with a USB stick. What do I do?
Now what do I do? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I've done this, and this, and this. What do I do now? It's
And that's an informed caller, right? I mean, that's all we could ever ask for, instead of and Jeff laughs too, because we all get this. I showed up at the job site with a USB stick. What do I do?
Now what?
Yeah. You have a computer? No.
I think
software.
I don't have a computer. Yeah. I don't have a computer. I'm supposed to magically make this happen, and I can just plug this USB stick right into the processor, right, and it'll load up and start working. So, Rich, one of the things that Jeff kind of alluded to is the fact that not for nothing, Steve is in New Jersey. He's with a good drive from Crestron's main headquarters. I'm just a couple hours, 4 hours away from the Chicago office. If you're in Richardson or anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you're somewhere around AMX. You're in San Francisco, brother. You are fairly removed from the central and eastern time zones. What do you need from manufacturers? All right. Yes, they both have, and Extron and the other ones have regional offices. But what is it that you need from the folks that, not just you, but guys that are in Idaho and Ohio and Wyoming and other areas where their locations are not? What do you need as far as training and support?
Well, I think that Chris and you guys were bringing it up, is that it's training is important and access to training is important. And I mean, I remember 20-something odd years ago when when Crestron West opened up. That was huge. It was like leaving the mothership and actually trying to open something up that was in our time zone. Because you get to about 2 o'clock Pacific time, and nothing like trial by fire. It's like you're doing it on your own. I also remember when AMX, when they first started opening up the support teams, and the early AMX West team. This is going back to the mid '90s, early mid '90s, 93, 94, somewhere around there, and all of a sudden you could make a call at 4 o'clock on West Coast time, and there was some support there. From a training standpoint, I think what's happened is that, and I've said this over and over, is that as an industry we're maturing, and what's happening because we're maturing, there's also some fragmentation that's occurring as well. In the old days, it was just you had to be a jack of all trades. There was just no other way to do it because the automation and the control layer was still so new. You were kind of barreling your way in, and you only had so many connections to deal with. You were still dealing with the physical side of things that you were troubleshooting. As the industry has matured, as the technology has matured, we're not dealing with physical devices as much anymore. We're dealing with data, and that's a completely different way of approaching it. And what's happening, and I feel, is that it's requiring systems programmers and companies that focus on system programming, apart from integrators, to really be more cross-trained than ever before. Because you have to focus on so many other things than just the object you're controlling. Just, you know, the device that says Crestron or AMX on it is only one part of the puzzle, right? You know, there's your device, and you can say, okay, this device works or it doesn't when I plug it in and there's the tools there. But you're then expanding beyond it. So, you know, what helps, and as an example, I couldn't make Masters. You know, my schedule, you know, again, being on the West Coast, couldn't make it. Just wasn't going to happen, and I had to make a decision to it. What I will say, though, that's great is that after Masters ended, you could go onto the website and log in, and under, you know, the certified status, there was the information available. So even though I couldn't make it there, which, you know, just from the fraternity and being able to ask a question directly, and like Jeff was saying, being able to sit down with a design engineer and say, hey, look, this happened to me, this didn't happen to me, why did this decision happen, and being able to get, you know, a yes or no and working through. But, you know, the fact is now, especially with high-speed internet, and really, you know, what does it mean? It's leveraging high-speed internet, leveraging the technology, leveraging all of the, you know, we're companies who deal in distance learning applications, right? You know, on the commercial side. So maybe we ought to hire some professionals to kind of leverage that part of it too. And we're seeing that. We're starting to see the inklings of it. Like Chris was saying, is, you know, some prerequisites to be able to flatten the playing field. Yeah, I mean, you don't send somebody to Bob Bondurant Racing School who doesn't have their driver's license yet, right? But that's the equivalent of what was happening. I mean, you were just throwing them in there and saying, go as fast as you can and see what can happen. So as we now have almost a quarter of a century of experience beneath us now in this industry, we can now look and say, all right, these are the things we suck at. So let's focus on fixing that, finding ways to bring new blood into the industry without burning them out, without a, you know, trial by fire. I mean, because, I mean, let's face it. I mean, still in this industry, part of it is, you know, you throw the baby in the, you know, what's that apparel? They throw it in the water, and if it swims, it lives, and if it doesn't, oh well, you know, go get another one. And that's kind of really how we've been treating the industry. And I think that as we're trying to bring in people from high school, people from, you know, trade schools or anything else, it's our responsibility, it's our professional responsibility to educate them and not browbeat them because they don't know. I mean, there's you know, you've got to be able to raise the level, and I think that right now the technology is given that opportunity, and people learn at different rates. I mean, I'm married to a teacher, and if anything that I've learned is that people learn differently, right? And what works for somebody who's a fantastic coder and works with things on more of an abstract level may not have the bare bones, you know, kind of nuts and bolts approach to things. So the ability for flexibility of learning, the ability for schedules, you know, again, we're all still in business. We all still have projects, and, you know, when you have enough time, and definitely you make it to training, but there's also the reality of that sometimes you got to pick your poison. So expanding the breadth of the opportunities available, so that people can get in and still have access to the information without penalizing them because they couldn't jump on the plane and make a 5-hour flight. That's really where my feelings go towards. As somebody who, I mean, I used to.
And one of the key initiatives that we're focusing on this year is really anywhere, anytime, any device. So to your point, Rich, folks might be behind a rack all day and can't make it to a class. Well, you know, are there night school options for that? You know, the ability for me to just simply time shift an instructor is a lot easier, especially when you incorporate distance learning, so folks can remote into your classroom. One of the challenges we have is freighting gear around everywhere. Well, if you can just remote in, like we're doing here today, to my classroom, you still have access to all the gear. It's not the 100% same experience as getting someone into the classroom, but it's pretty close. And so time shifting is a huge thing. Putting that content out there for you so that if it is 2 in the morning and you need to figure out how to transfer firmware to this new device you've never seen before, I can search for a 5-minute video and find that. Those are all hugely important things. They don't all exist today. A lot of that takes effort and content to be created, but there's definitely a trajectory to get there, and I know that that's a huge focus item for us. I'm sure for others in the industry as well. But for us specifically right now, we're doing distance learning, and that's allowing folks to not have to travel. In the near future, we'll be time shifting it to where we can offer some off-hour stuff so that Rich on the West Coast can go to a class, and, you know, it might string it out a little bit longer, but I think a lot of people are willing to do that as opposed to not going to training at all. I think generally everyone wants to be better at their job. They just don't always have the option to go to training. So from a training department, anything that we can do to make it easier to consume and obtain training material is what we really are focused on.
Down with East Coast bias. Down with the East Coast bias, man.
Hey, we have an office since never fell.
We start an East Coast West Coast war all over again. Steve, from what does groups like Infocom groups, organizations like Infocom and CEDIA, how do they fit into this scenario of making sure that people keep up on training?
So I think Chris touched on it a little bit earlier about the fact that they provide the baseline. So the CTS, basically a CTS, in my opinion, is basically identifies the fact that the cursory knowledge and general information about the industry, and you've made the commitment to be a member of the industry. And what they require is that you keep up your certification by taking classes that pertain to your area of expertise, and those could be offered at a trade show. They could be done online, and which is really what helps us in a big way is we get credits for going to manufacturers training, like AMX classes or Crestron Masters, or even any of the unrelated classes that the manufacturers offer. Some of them offer classes in a specific product or area of technology. So you get a double benefit. Basically, you get to learn about what you need to know, plus you're also now keeping up your CTS. So plus, for people who are looking to get more involved in a particular area, and I could speak mostly from the commercial side. Infocom provides a design certification and an install certification, and maybe down the road something along the lines of a network or programming. That's something we've always pushed for and wanted to be able to have, so we can hang our hat on. It's just putting together that knowledge base that is something that isn't related to a particular manufacturer, but it would be a nice thing to have. And we've talked so many times on this show about the fact that the training is the key for us to bringing in new people into the industry. So anything like that is going to be some benefit for us to be able to grow any type of company, an integration firm, a consulting firm, a programming firm. But we all have agreed that we need to bring more people into this industry.
Let's talk about certification for a second, and we'll hit the manufacturers first, and then we'll get Rich and Steve on that. How important are certifications, not just for obviously maintaining a database of who knows your stuff, but also of dealing with certain products? I mean, there are, not for nothing, but both of you and other manufacturers have got some pretty complicated things. Is that valuable when it comes to making sure that this person or this company or this dealer has a certain level of programmer? Jeff, we'll start with you. How important is certification?
Oh, extreme. I think it's extremely important. It started. I've always believed in this. Being an electrical engineer, of going through getting my degree, not just picking up random knowledge along the way, but actually finishing everything out. So we have our whole certification program with entrance exams to make sure people are learning along the way, and just because you're a certified programmer or you're an engineer, it doesn't mean you're the best in your field, but it just means you've passed your driver's test. We know you've been taught the proper things to do, and hopefully you follow them along. So we think the whole certification program is extremely important. We put a lot into it. Unfortunately, with that, it also means you have to say no a lot of times. Whereas because not everyone can pass and not everyone can make it, and I think until I came on and took this over, I don't have a problem with not everybody passes. Sometimes with the public school system, you hear that.
Okay.
Did I strike a nerve?
Yeah, explain that, because here's the thing. I'm not.
PTSD flashback.
Well, yeah, yes. I'm not. I'm not. I hope I'm not speaking to because I may be. You know, you can slap me around. But integrators have to pay to go to class, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it costs money.
Yes.
How does that exactly fly when I'm the head? Well, let's take it. I'm the director of operations for Innovet, right? If I send somebody to class and I've paid out however many dollars it's taken, I fully expect that person to pass. How do you relay that?
Well, good, because you're the ones I want to hear from, because there's other things that we want to do. And again, I don't know if, Chris, you're starting any of this or possibly in there, but of like the entrance exam. Did you just give the next guy in line a laptop and say, hey, you're my new programmer? Because you may or may not, I mean, like I know Steve knows what it takes to be a programmer on it. I don't know if you do. And by you I mean the operations guy on there. So we have entrance exams, and I mean when I first put them in, you thought I cut limbs off of these people. Like, how could you? And I heard it from our own salespeople. You're making it difficult for my dealers. I'm like, no. I actually want to make it better for the dealers, because again, this was at a master's class when listening to guys like Steve saying, hey, I'm going to send my guy in for training. How do you know that they're ready and they're going to get the most out of it? Because it is a big investment on your part that, are you sending them down the street or are you putting them on an airplane? I want to make sure that you're sending the right guy and that guy is ready for it. Chris was alluding to it, like he doesn't know what, speaker level is or line level. It's like, okay, you're going to have a real problem in this class. So the idea is putting in the entrance exams is if you've got a problem fighting to get into the entrance exam, God forbid if you came to this class, you would have had a real bad time. You would have had a bad time. You would have gone back. Crestron sucks. None of your stuff works, but the whole thing. You now just paid for them for 3-4 days, whatever it is, plus airfare and everything to get there, and now you get a bad taste in your mouth. So we want you as the business owner to know you're sending the right guy to come through there. And unfortunately, I mean, not everyone's a programmer. I mean, my youngest son, he went for computer science, and when he said he wanted to do that, my heart sank, because I know how many people look to go for computer science and then drop out to something else, because it's not everyone's a programmer.
I think there's two sides to the certification discussion. There's, as a business owner, why do I need certified people? I want to have the plaque on the wall or the certificate that says I'm a differentiator in the marketplace. I've received their seal of approval, and you should pick us because we know what we're doing, maybe more than the person who doesn't. As a manufacturer, we spent probably a huge part of our trainer conference last year defining what it means to be certified. And so I stepped back to other things in our daily life that we hear the term certified for. And so a common easy one is think of used cars, right? So if you have a high-end certified used car, as a buyer, what does that mean to you? And so I generally would equate that to some type of warranty, some type of guarantee of performance. And so there's no different when you apply it to a control manufacturer. When we say this is a certified individual, and to Jeff's point, we stick that person back in the field, that certification needs to mean something. As a business owner, if you didn't pass the test, if my employee was unable to pass the certification exam, at least I know what to expect from him in the field. But I think, hey, John is a great programmer. That's awesome. But is he costing me money in the field because he might be not following best practices or might not be following the manufacturer's suggestions? And so as a result, I have the ability, when the certification means something, because that's important. You've got to start there. If it doesn't mean anything and it's a thanks for coming award, then as a business owner, now I have a false sense of security that, hey, manufacturer, you said he was qualified, you said he was certified, and now we're losing money because he doesn't have a clue in the field. All right, so that's the negative side of what could happen if it didn't mean anything. And so we're trying to put those roadblocks in place, and I know that Jeff is doing the same thing to really make it mean something so that when you do spend the money to go to training, it's worth it. And so, for us, we put that figure at about $5,000 a week per employee. And where that comes from is we don't charge for our class. So for a dealer partner to come to class, that part's free. But that's not the whole part of the equation. There's the airfare, the hotel, meals. There's also lost productivity where I lose billable hours. And so we really think if you put all that together, you get about $5,000 a head for the week. So am I getting a commensurate return on investment for that when he comes back from training? that's certainly my charge, and I know that it's very important that we're able to go back and say when that person has passed this certification, it means these things. And usually we define them in terms of outcomes and skill set capabilities, that this person should be able to do X, Y, and Z. And to Jeff's point, again, it doesn't make them the best programmer in the world or the best installer in the world, but it says they can perform these minimal tasks that you need to be successful in the field and make yourself financially viable. Because if not, then you're going to be out there quoting what you think it should take, and then finding out very soon from your operations manager what it really took in terms of time, and you're going to find that you're not really getting profitable in your jobs. So it's not to say that every certified person becomes profitable, but it certainly means the opposite, to where every uncertified person is most likely not doing things as efficiently as possible and not necessarily by the manufacturer's suggestions. And Steve mentioned it earlier, I want to bring up the renewal part. I know that we're renewing certifications once a year. The fact of the matter is we release product at 3 major shows a year.
Yeah.
That's new products, new firmwares, new everything that you need to stay up with. I saw a post recently from an individual who said, I had on those test questions, Chris, that you asked me to do for that core stuff, you were asking about products we don't even sell. Well, that's interesting because I'm asking about the most common products we sell in high volume, right? So if the most common product is not what you're selling, it tells me you're probably stuck in a very old control-only mentality, and that's all you're doing, and you're not continuing on. So if you were to see a new product in the field, yet you still had the banner that said you're certified, does that really equate, right? We run into a jeopardy here where your certification has to stay current with the product and the methods that are being used that are ever evolving, right? They're constantly changing, and that's why this renewed continuing education is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I'll throw out is, the idea can training and certification also apply to different levels of positions, I guess, within a company. So somebody that's moved up into management of programming, should they need to know different skill set than the actual programmer? I'll talk about myself, for example. I haven't programmed, believe it or not, in a couple of years, but I still would like to learn, and I still would like to be certified in the knowledge that I need to do my job, to be able to manage my team or talk to customers. And is that something that's being considered?
I think it's absolutely being considered in terms of, sorry to step over you, Jeff, in terms of you as a manager understanding what your people are doing and what they're expected to do, so that when you put a project in front of them, you understand the intricacies that are involved and can communicate them on a totally different level than you would if you didn't understand their world. And so are you asking, as a manufacturer, are we putting together that more business manager related training?
Yeah, and do you guys foresee a need for that? Because I think that there is a little bit of a void and some place where somebody who needs to know, they don't need to know what a programmer needs to know, but they need to know what the general idea of the products and the pieces, and be able to communicate with the programmer.
It's almost like a consultant type design course.
Right, and one that we're planning at the moment is we've got to get past product and we've got to get past systems implementation curriculum, but it'll be classified as almost a sales training, but it is higher level than you would expect in terms of the ability to convey that message, understand what all the boxes do and where they fit, to have a working knowledge. Right now we're so focused in the weeds, and I'll use myself as an example. I think we focus heavily on product-specific training that it's hard to come up and find bandwidth to do the more overview type material. I certainly recognize it as a need, and we've been communicating it around our team internally to find a way to schedule that and really roadmap that out. But I absolutely see it as a complementary piece to the entire offering, where we look at the product for the person that's dealing with it at a very specific technical level. But then, as a systems designer, you're right. With Tim, what you mentioned, it's more of a system designer consultant kind of a thing, where we have design training. I think most manufacturers have how to design a system in their world. But there almost needs to be a higher level than that says, okay, you don't need to know the SKUs and the part numbers, but let's talk conceptually. When we talk about enterprise network media, here are the considerations. When we talk about network security, here's some considerations. And so it's almost a higher level than any of us have really gotten to before, and just really it's a bandwidth issue, I know, on our part at the moment to make it happen, but we definitely have it on the plan.
All right, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, this last Masters, we started some of that, Steve, if you remember that. We had about this whole thing about using Simple Sharp and what it means. So we had the John Legge general overview as to you as a bit, because again, this is like thinking of someone like yourself as the business owner, that what does this really mean to me? Do I need to now learn a whole new tool? Do I need to get all new people? What does it mean? What can it do? Then we offered okay, now you're the programmer, open up your laptop and your head's going to explode because now you got to learn how to do it. And I don't know if you sent anyone to those classes, but you heard them, when they were talking about it. And that was really done on purpose so that you as the business owner, and as you know, some of the other guys, the Bob Horns of the world, that, you were the hardcore programmers then, but now you've elevated yourself up to be now the business owner of, you have to understand what this means to you, because I'll get calls, say, from someone like yourself or Bob, and say, hey, do I got to go learn C#? Or what does this mean to me? And that was the idea behind that. Everyone knows and gets this whole new thing that's coming out there. This is what's coming. This is what we're doing. This is the beauty of it and all. Yes, there's going to be an investment on your part. Are you going to go? Because in some cases you saw, the business owner, he's doing everything, he's going, or you're telling, hey, Jeff or whoever you got to go to this class and you got to learn how to do this because you got to make us successful by doing it. And so, we started, that kind of concept in this first Masters, and we already had up in New Jersey our good, bad, and ugly about, about the whole program of what worked, what didn't work, and all. And what also came out of it was we want to do more stuff like that. We also want to do more stuff along the lines of networking, not entry-level networking, but more of a middle intermediate networking, and then really a more advanced networking and security, because especially in the corporate world, it's becoming more and more important. The whole idea of BACnet, of how do you do something like that? How do you take advantage of it? You as a business owner, you come to a job and they say, oh, you need to know BACnet or this BMS system and all like that. And some of you are like, because you're up on it and you know all that. The guy sitting next to you are going like, I've never heard of that before. What is that?
Sure.
I've sat at master's class last year, and there were new guys that were there, and they heard about like reentrancy and all. I'm like, is he making that stuff up? I'm like, no, he's not making it up. This is really important. You got to pay attention, And again, so like you say, we're using that certification as a level, but as we move forward, and that whole idea, and I hope you like the idea. I didn't look at your survey response of how you liked it or not, but of this being able to pick and choose what makes sense for you, more of project management stuff. These whole things. We bring Rich in from Macau, doing this, remote session here, as to it's more important for you to understand how do you do and scale this, super huge project, and then you've got the guys that are actually going to program it. How are you going to be? You need to know all the levels of it, but you don't need to be the person that does everything. You need to know the top level, someone does the other stuff. So we see that as a need, and again, a lot of it, to Chris, a lot of it is bandwidth.
Sure.
We've got a lot of stuff, and again, a lot of that stuff is, again, it's for the industry. It's not whether you're going to program in Crestron or AMX or whoever. It's industry of getting them and teaching them, that whole of how this stuff works and plays together, because a lot of them don't know. They didn't go to school for it, or maybe it'll pique an interest, and then they will go back and learn more. So,
right. I certainly don't envy your position in that, and I just wanted to pass along the fact that as in the position that you're in when you're not doing it every day, there is a certain amount of learning that you need to stay fresh on, certainly, and and I don't want to become somebody who my team doesn't respect in terms of talking to our customers. I want to be able to know what they need to know, just not at the real detailed level that they know it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're going to create the breakfast club of programmers, right? The Zoolander programming school of kids who don't read too good or something.
and Rich, I want to bring you in this because I want to take what.
Because I can't read. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because you can't read. California school system. But from an integrator and from a programmer's standpoint and a business owner standpoint, what responsibility do your employees have to put forth their best effort. I mean, Jeff and Chris both talked about the entrance exams and making sure that from from their point of view, your programmer is ready. What responsibility do they have as your employee to understand, look, Rich is putting out, some money, whether or not the class cost, like Chris said, $5,000-$6,000 a week for that person to be off the job, not exactly making you money, but you're still putting out all this effort. What responsibility do they bear?
Well, I think Jeff had brought up a great point, which is, not everybody's going to pass, and business isn't, you don't get participatory medals in business necessarily, and when you're hiring somebody, you have some certain prerequisites. I mean, and part of it is, as an employer and as an employee, is are you showing significant growth? Are you showing the ability to master? Are you, some people are happy where they're at. Some people are looking to earn more or get more responsibility or ascend in the ranks within a company, and so you need some form of metrics. I mean, it's like anything else. You just can't qualifiably say, okay, yeah, I think you're ready or you're doing a great job. Sometimes you need to be able to say, look, if you want to take this next step, say you're an entry-level programmer, we've designated you as step 1. You're an intern or an entry-level programmer, and here's your hourly rate, and this is what you get based on the competency that you're showing right now. And and we've done it several times. I mean, I've had it with in other companies I've had where we were grooming people up to replace me, and it would be a matter of saying, okay, now you're telling me basically in your work goals, because hopefully you're sitting with your employees at some point and saying, hey, you've been here for a couple of months. What do you see yourself doing? What would you like to do? And working with passions. And I mean, and again, going to the West Coast vibe again, man. I just, you gotta.
I'm a big fan of passions and goals.
Follow your bliss.
I'm with you with that.
But I mean, you gotta like what you do, and at the same time, you gotta educate yourself. And so it becomes a matter of saying, okay, if you want to take this next step and become an associate programmer or a senior programmer, here are the minimums that you have to reach. And if this is your salary goal or your vacation goal or all of these things, here is what we expect of you, and we're going to give you X amount of time to reach those. And if you need help, we'll look at it. But again, I mean, I'm paying for this. I'm signing your paycheck, and so my goal, hopefully, is that whoever is going to be working with the company and partnering with me and supporting the company and supporting themselves, there needs to be the ability for them to be able to show at least different steps in their growth potential, and their growth. And some might top out, some might have huge amounts of potential, some might move from programming to the management side or the design side or field engineering. I mean, there's all of these things in this industry that you can do. And it is kind of like college. What you start out thinking what you want to do and what you think you're good at isn't necessarily what you wind up having the aptitude for. But you have to build that framework, that foundation to be able to say, hey, this is the stuff I'm really good at. This is the stuff I'm not great at. Let's focus here. So my view to kind of shorten it up is from a training standpoint and for paying for somebody is to be able to say, look, if you want to grow in this industry, if you want to increase your earning potential and your responsibility and your longevity in the career, then here are the things that I'm putting out for you to do. I can't make somebody train. I mean, there's certain legalities of I can't just fire somebody just because I feel like it necessarily. I mean, I need to provide a positive working environment for them, and I think it's like anything else. It's like you invest in your people, and typically your people will appreciate it, but you've got to give them the ability to grow, and training and certification is definitely part of that. At least it gives me some metrics to work with when they come in the next year and say, hey, I want a raise. Okay, let's talk about this. What have you done? Well, I did this, 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 and this. Okay, you've absolutely stated your case on why you should get an increase in responsibility and pay and taking the next step. Or if we sit down with somebody and say, well, I did this, and I find out that they got sent to the Programming Breakfast Club 3 times, I'm like, well, maybe you're not ready yet. Let's consider this, and let's take a look at what is going to work for you. So, sometimes it's tough. Because you want the best for your employees, but at the same time, like you said, not everybody's going to pass, and so you need to at least have some objective tools to be able to weigh and measure things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. As we wrap up here, I'm going to ask I don't know if it's a difficult question or not, but it's an interesting one at least. Chris and then Jeff, as the people who kind of head up your respective manufacturers' education, what's your number one job? What is your, maybe I'm not asking what's on your job description and knowledge, but as an educator for the industry, what is your number one job, Chris?
Our number one focus is student experience, and I know that it's not really in the same vein as what your question is, but I'll tell you that's my charge, and so everything that we do is about the student experience, removing friction, helping them do better at their job. Ultimately, like I said earlier, I think everyone wants to do a good job, and they want to get better at what they do to make them faster, more profitable. But in terms of the programs we're laying out and the different initiatives that we have underway, it's all about the student initiative and the student experience. And so whether it's how you're greeted when you walk in the building, it's the access to the equipment that you have in the room, or the resources that we surround you with in and outside of the classroom. To me, at the end of the day, that's what it goes to.
All right, Jeff, what's your number one job?
Mine is to educate everyone in the industry. Hopefully they would, start with Crestron, stay with Crestron, and obviously they, again, will go to other manufacturers as well. But with some of the stuff that Chris is working on also is to take down those roadblocks. I know when someone submits an entrance exam at 2 o'clock in the morning on Easter Sunday. On it. So I don't want to say, well, if you're not in between 9 and 5, you're probably not working on our stuff. And I know that's absolutely not the case. So, try to make stuff available, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you're in the West Coast or in the Midwest or on the East Coast, don't care. Make the information available to them to learn, and and also have a good experience doing it, because it's important. I really like what I'm doing. As all of you can probably attest to, your job can get very stressful sometimes, and it's like you sit back and like, why do I do this? And well, because it's 7 days a week and a lot of hours, but I really do like what I do, and I believe in what I'm doing and the company I'm working for, and that's why I've been here for so long on it. And I want others to feel that, because when I hear someone doesn't like their job or they don't like what they're doing, it's like I just want to help them find that happy place for them, because if you're working, you got to do something. Hopefully you'll have a good experience doing it. And we hope you have a good experience through Crestron doing it, or even one of the other manufacturers, because it's a great industry. From all the people that are in there, like you guys and other acquaintances and everything that we've met along the way. How many husbands and wives are now husbands and wives because they met somewhere along in the AV industry, and they go way back. So people that you're not even sure what company they work for at this point because they've moved around, but you've been able to make those ties, and I think that's important, to just make a better overall industry for everybody to that we can all play in, because there's plenty of room, there's plenty of money to be made by everybody, so I'll leave it at that.
Brother. Absolutely, I like that. All right, well, that's a good place to end. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Mr. Rich Fregosa, thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's always awesome, and appreciate the spirited discourse.
I wanted to point out for those of you not watching on video, and those of you who didn't notice, Mr. Fregosa has a copy of Star Wars, the Blu-ray set, over his left shoulder.
I am preparing to immerse my 5-year-old son in the trilogy sooner. I was trying to hold out. It was 1977. I was 7 years old, but the Disney push has accelerated my timeline. So yeah.
Good. How can people find you, sir?
You can find me on the interwebs, Twitter at rfregosa, the website fregosadesign.com. Type up my name, and every once in a while something shows up. I know that 2 case studies with a good friend of mine have shown up on the Crestron website, so we're having some fun with that in the residential sphere. And other than that, obviously follow us here, and come CEDIA time on cepro.com.
Yay, CEDIA. That's in Dallas in October.
Dallas in October.
Very cool. Jeff Shachik from Crestron, thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Where can people find more about you or Crestron?
The Crestron website is the best place to find everyone. If not, my email is first initial last name at crestron.com. So if you have any training questions, comments, concerns, whether reaching out to your local sales rep if you have one, or the local office, or myself directly, someone will get back to you with it.
All right, very good. Thank you. Also is Mr. Chris Backus from AMX. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And where can people, there you go, right there, if you're watching video, there's his email. Where can people find you?
Pretty much just like Rich, kind of all over the interweb. Find me on LinkedIn. If you want to shoot me an email, it's first.last@harman.com. If you're looking for training-specific stuff, just amx.com/training, and we'll be happy to help.
All right, very good. And last but not least, Mr. Steve Greenblatt from Control Concepts. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Another great episode. Couple of things just to throw out in the whole spirit of training. Next Wednesday, if you're listening to this in real time, June 3rd, Infocom's doing a webinar on modern approaches to control systems, which Tim and I both contributed to the white paper, and I'll be presenting there. I believe it's at 1 p.m. Eastern. Apparently, there's a good turnout. So that's something to check out and to learn about. We just did a rehearsal today. It looks like it'll be real good. And doing something special with a friend and associate, Mark Lavecchia, at Infocom. We put together a group of technology managers that we call Tech Talk, and we're doing an event on Tuesday the 17th, I think it is, the night before Infocom starts. And reach out at techtalkav.com/events if you want to get more information. I'd love to have technology managers join us. And if you want to reach me personally, I'm at Steve Greenblatt, and our company website, controlconcepts.net. Sorry for the long promo.
No, and that's actually the second annual Tech Talk there at Infocom. So
it is, and should be fun.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. As a former tech manager myself, I am very excited about what Steve and Mark are doing with it. It's a great resource for tech managers, whether you've been in the industry a long time or you're just getting your feet wet. It's a really great resource. So yeah, check that out if you would. And if you're in town on Tuesday, go check that out. So, all right. My name is Tim Albright. Don't follow me, but go by the website if you would, please. avnation.tv. avnation.tv. You can find this program and a host of others. We've got a social show, a live events and staging show, an education-focused show, all kinds of stuff. Some really cool things coming down the pipeline. We've got the guys are working on a brand new website. I'm hoping, and they're telling me it will be done before Infocom. So that'll be exciting. Speaking of Infocom, if you're there, come by the booth 6667. We'll be doing a couple of shows. We'll be doing giveaways and stuff like that. We'll be doing a live version of our weekly roundup, AV Week, on Friday of the show between 2 and 4, as luck will have it. And I do say luck because I am not smart enough to plan it. It will be episode 200 of that very program, so that'll be kind of cool. Also, we have our Tweet Up, which is our yearly AV Tweeps Tweet Up. It's a networking event, free food and drink from 4 to 6. In room W23A. So yeah, check all that out. But go by the website. That's where you can find all that stuff. avnation.tv. avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been A State of Control.